You're listening to the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast. Just a quick heads up before we get started with this episode, I wanted to let you know about a free resource for listeners of the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast. That means you. If you are planning your next trip abroad, or if you're just getting back out into the world again, maybe you're going to an event or to a festival or to a meetup, that you need to be prepared for what to say when you meet someone for the first time. Download our free Spanish conversation guide so that you'll be prepared to have a conversation with anyone that you meet for the first time in Spanish. We give you a list of the most common questions that you'll be asked and that you may want to ask someone when you meet them for the first time, along with the responses so that you can be prepared when you have that conversation in less than 30 minutes. So to get your free conversation guide, just go to SpanishConversationGuide.com. Simple, right? SpanishConversationGuide.com to download your quick guide to prep for your first Spanish conversation.
Bienvenidos! Welcome to the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast, the show for Spanish learners that love music, travel, and culture. Close your grammar textbooks, shut down the language apps, and open your ears to how Spanish is spoken in the real world. Let us show you how to go from beginner to bilingual. Here is your host, certified language coach, Tamara Marie.
Hola, bienvenidos al episodio 132. Welcome to episode 132 of the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast. In this week's episode, I am actually going to be the interviewee. So I will not be doing the interview this week, but I'm giving you an opportunity to hear someone else interview me. So I recently sat down with Olly Richards in episode 126 of this podcast to talk about story learning, which is learning languages, Spanish. He also covers lots of other languages and a method to learn through story. And I was actually also on Olly's podcast, and I'm sharing that interview with you today in case you have not checked it out yet, where he is asking me all about learning Spanish with music, how I came up with this concept, and sort of how Spanish con Salsa got started. So I hope you enjoy learning a little bit more about me and hearing me in the seat of the interviewee in this week's episode. We will be back next week with an all-new episode of the Learn Spanish con Salsa podcast, but enjoy my conversation with Olly Richards.
I am absolutely thrilled to be speaking with Tamara Marie, who is the founder of Spanish con Salsa, which is the best name in the world, I think, where Spanish learners can learn through the fun of Latin music. In our conversation, she shares the many advantages of learning languages through music, why narratives and rhythm are such powerful memory enhancers, and how she herself got fluent in Spanish. And you all know that I am a big advocate for learning through stories, and I am a musician as well. And so you won't get any arguments from me. What Tamara does is absolutely awesome. So without any further ado, Tamara, welcome to the show.
Gracias, Olly. Thank you for having me. I'm really glad to be here.
It's long overdue. We've been friends for years, and I remember being there at the inception of the name of Spanish con Salsa. Maybe you could tell the story of how that came to be.
Yes, it's funny. I remember when we were in Montreal. So at the time, it was the North American Polyglot Symposium, something very fancy, but they changed the name to Langfest, thankfully. And we were in this cafe in Montreal on the lunch break, and we were talking about, what we were all doing and kind of just having a chat. And, we were talking like, okay, so what do you do? What do you do with languages? Do you have a business? I was like, well, not really. I don't, it's really into it. And we started talking about, dancing salsa and how that's how I got into learning Spanish and how it really helps me. And Olly, you told me that you actually had a little bit of a background there with salsa as well, which I was surprised to hear.
Yeah. I don't look like it, but I do.
And you said, wow, that would be really, really great. There's so many people who dance salsa all over the world. It's like, yeah, it's true. And a lot of them don't speak Spanish or don't understand the music that they're listening to and dancing to. And I remember you sort of challenged me and said, Spanish con salsa. If you don't do it, I'm going to do it. And I said, okay, I take the challenge. And I got back to Baltimore, got back home, and I got my logo done like within a week, and I was off running. So yes, you were there at the inception.
Yeah.
And I thank you for that push to actually get me to actually do it, because it was a no-brainer, because it's the way that I learned. But I wasn't really thinking very much about business at the time. I was just thinking about, having a passion for language. So
yeah, well, I mean, all of these, everything that we start comes from somewhere, right? I mean, when I often tell the story of how I started I Will Teach You a Language, was the reason was because I just happened to read a book by Chris Guillebeau called The $100 Startup that had a chapter or mentioned Benny Lewis from Fluent in 3 months. And the book said something like, and Benny writes about languages on his blog and earns a full-time living whilst traveling around the world. And I thought, hey, I could do that. And if it wasn't for reading that chapter of that book, I probably would never have started my own thing. So, these things always come from one pivotal moment. A lot like language learning as well. We often start a language or fall in love with a language or really start to take a language seriously because of one tiny little moment that seems insignificant at the time, but then is actually a huge turning point. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about how you learned Spanish and what is paint the picture for us of your background with Spanish and how it links to music.
Well, it's interesting. I think like most people in the US, we were sort of made to pick a foreign language at some point in middle school. So probably when I was around 12 years old, it's like, oh, you have to pick a language. And at the time it was like French or Spanish. And everyone said, oh, Spanish is easier. So I chose Spanish, right? I would say that I say it just because it was my first exposure to the language. Was it helpful to me? Very limited way. I mean, and I took Spanish throughout high school as well. And, we were doing verb conjugation charts and, talking about the days of the week and the months of the year. And we didn't really ever have anything conversational. But because I had that exposure, I naively thought that I knew some Spanish. And probably about 10 years after I graduated high school, I decided to leave the country for the first time. So I was looking around of where to go, and somehow I found this language school in Panama. I said, oh, I'll just go there. I'll do some excursions. I'll do the whole solo traveler thing. It'll be great. It'll be a piece of cake. I know some Spanish. And I remember getting to the airport and, trying to fill out the customs forms and like, okay, I've got this down. I know what to say. They're going to ask me what my address is. So I just kept thinking in my head, okay, I just need to remember the word dirección because that's address. Okay, they're going to ask me where I'm staying. And I get there to the line, they're like, siguiente, like next person. And I didn't understand anything. I'd never heard the word dirección. I didn't know what he was asking me for. I just handed him a paper because I actually wrote down my address of where I was staying at this bed and breakfast, and I kind of gave it to him. And I was like hoping they would let me in the country because I had no idea what was going on. So I quickly learned when I actually tried to use my sort of high school Spanish skills in the real world that it